Two masked men quickly entered the ice cream shop, one blocking the exit, the other pointing directly at Steve. They weren't common robbers. They knew exactly who they were looking for.
Steve Stone.
The voice was cold, calculated.
You messed with the wrong people.
Before we continue this touching story, let us know in the comments what city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Daddy, can I get 2 scoops? 6-year-old Michael Thompson tugged at his father's hand. They had just entered the brightly lit ice cream parlor. The sweet aroma of fresh waffles hung in the air. The air conditioning offered welcome relief from the suffocating July heat in Dallas. Sure, champ, David Thompson smiled, ruffling his son's hair. Chocolate and vanilla, like always? It was late afternoon on a Tuesday. Father and son were celebrating the end of a day with their weekly tradition. David had picked up Mikey from daycare, and now they were heading to their favorite ice cream shop. The parlor was nearly empty. Just them, the employee behind the counter, and Steve Stone. Steve waved from across the shop. David's best friend since high school, an off-duty police officer who frequented the ice cream shop, not just for the ice cream, but for the waitress he was interested in. "Hey Dave, Mikey's growing up, isn't he?" "Uncle Steve." Mikey ran to greet his godfather. "Daddy's gonna let me get 2 scoops." Suddenly, 2 hooded men entered the ice cream shop, firing revenge shots. Everything happened in seconds that felt like hours. Steve tried to reach for his gun. David screamed, "Mikey, hide," and pushed his son behind the ice cream freezer. A sequence of shots echoed through the parlor. The assassins spared no effort. David and Steve fell under a hail of bullets, blood spreading across the cold floor. One of the shooters approached where Mikey was hiding. The boy trembled, his eyes wide with terror.
"Kid."
The voice was cold as ice.
"Kid, if you ever open your mouth, you'll meet the same end."
And with a penetrating look at the boy, he fired one more shot into Steve's body. The men left. The door chime rang for the last time. Mikey remained hidden for 20 minutes until the police arrived. When he was finally found, he was in shock, holding his little cup of chocolate and vanilla ice cream. His small fingers were rigid around the container, as if time had frozen. But the ice cream continued melting between his fingers, while silent tears fell down his face. From that moment, the boy never spoke again. The last thing heard from his mouth was an anguished scream of pain during his father's funeral. Jessica Thompson, widowed at 27, struggled for 2 years in Dallas. Therapists, doctors, specialists all tried to reach her son, locked in a silence that seemed impenetrable. Bills piled up. Her late husband's life insurance had run out, and Mikey remained mute, spending hours drawing horses on every paper. He could find, always with his toy horse by his side, the last gift David had given him. While Jessica fought to keep her head above a rising sea of bills, the shadow of impunity hung over them. The police investigation in Dallas had stagnated. Among the many unsolved crimes in the big city, Steve and David's murder became just another statistic. For Mikey, the threat directed at him that terrible day was never confronted by justice, cementing in his child's heart the fear that speaking was dangerous, because they were still out there. That's when the eviction notice arrived. Jessica held the paper with trembling hands, reading the words that confirmed her worst fears. Final deadline, last day of the month. The dilemma that had consumed her for months had finally reached its limit. Working full-time meant leaving Mikey alone for long hours, but without full-time work, she couldn't pay the basic bills. To make matters worse, Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who looked after the boy in the afternoons, had become seriously ill and could no longer help. The fragile support system Jessica had built was crumbling like a house of cards. That night, with Mikey sleeping and the notice on the kitchen table, Jessica called her mother. "Mom," her voice broke before she could even explain. "I got the eviction notice. If I don't pay by the end of the month, we'll be evicted." "Jesus, honey, what do you mean?" "I can't do it anymore, Mom." Tears fell as words tumbled out. "I work all day, and when I get home, Mikey is... He's still the same. Mrs. Patterson is sick, can't take care of him anymore. And a babysitter, I don't have money to pay for one." Dorothy Miller, on the other end of the line, felt her heart breaking hearing her daughter's despair. "I feel like the worst mother in the world, Mom. I can't take care of my own son," Jessica sobbed. Sometimes I feel like running away, disappearing from this world. Mom, it's so hard. Honey, Dorothy Miller said with a firm but caring voice, stop that. You're not a bad mother. You're fighting alone against a terrible situation. She paused. Come home. Fairview may not have much, but it has what you both need right now, peace. At 29, Jessica organized the move to Fairview. It took hours packing clothes, Mikey's toys, David's important documents, making a list of belongings to take and donate, and reliving all the memories of a life built in Dallas, Fairview, Texas, population 3,147, one main street, 3 churches, and Dorothy's little market. It was in this small town that, as with every move, hope for a new beginning was born. On a March morning, Buck Harrison, patriarch of a prosperous 15,000-acre, $25 million Texas ranch, entered Dorothy's little market, looking for labor for the upcoming work season. Dot, he said to the old acquaintance who had run the establishment for decades, do you know anyone strong who's looking for work on the ranch? Oh, Buck, there's always people looking. Let me think. Jimmy was looking for some work last week. But speaking of people looking for work, you wouldn't believe who's living here now, my daughter, Jessica. Poor thing, lost her husband in Dallas tragically, moved here with the boy, and she's looking for work. Anything right now, you know, to get by. That's when Buck noticed the boy sitting on the floor behind the counter, near his grandmother, drawing horses with a broken pencil. Next to him, a small brown plastic toy horse, worn by time and constant handling. Is that the boy? He asked, observing the drawings. They weren't child scribbles. There was proportion, movement, life in those strokes. The boy drew horses, with an uncommon power of observation for someone his age, his eyes alternating between the paper and the toy horse. That's Mikey, Dot confirmed. Lost his father tragically, the boy was traumatized. Hasn't spoken since then, just draws horses. She looked at the toy with tenderness. That little horse was the last gift David gave him. Since then, he won't let go of it. He keeps drawing, looking at the toy, as if he's talking to his father's memory. Buck examined the drawings more closely, then looked at Dot. The old acquaintance rarely asked for favors, and when she did, she had good reasons. And Jessica, what kind of work did she do in Dallas? Human resources management. The girl has a degree, Buck. Competent as they come. Dot made a strategic pause. You know, with all those people you're going to need to hire for the seasons, someone to coordinate the staff, organize the teams. Jessica understands people. Buck. And she really needs it. Buck Harrison hadn't gotten where he was by ignoring good ideas. Dot was right. With the expansion plans he had in mind, it would be useful to train someone to coordinate worker teams, an opportunity to develop local talent for future operations. And there was something about that boy that sparked his curiosity. Tell her to show up at the ranch Monday morning. We'll talk about coordinating the teams. The following Monday, Jessica showed up at the Harrison Ranch with Mikey by her side. Dot had explained that Buck wanted to meet them, and Jessica, though nervous, was grateful for the job interview opportunity. My son doesn't speak, Jessica explained when Buck received them. Actually, he hasn't spoken since he lost his father. He saw something no child should see. I understand. When a child witnesses something like that, it takes time to feel safe. Again, Buck replied, observing how the boy looked fascinated at the corrals. Cole, come here. Cole Harrison, at 36, was his father's right-hand man. Married, father of 2 children, he had dedicated 2 decades to horse breeding and cattle management. Hearing the call, he approached promptly. Yes, sir? Son, this is Jessica, the boy's mother. I need to talk to her about coordinating our worker teams. Take the boy with you and show him the horses while we talk. Cole nodded respectfully to Jessica and smiled at Mikey. Come with me, boy. I'll show you some special friends. Buck led Jessica to the ranch office, a rustic but well-organized building overlooking the corrals. For 40 minutes, they talked about the position, coordinating cowboy teams during branding, weaning, and cattle vaccination seasons. Jessica demonstrated solid knowledge in people management, and Buck was impressed with her competence and determination. The job is yours, Buck finally said. We start next week. Fair salary, and if you do well, there's possibility for growth. Jessica breathed a sigh of relief. feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison, you won't regret it." Meanwhile, Cole had led Mikey through the corrals, starting with the gentlest horses, old docile mares used to teach children. "These here are the gentlest," Cole explained, showing how to hold hay in the palm of his hand. "See how they eat slowly? They never bite, just take it carefully." He observed everything with wide eyes, absorbing every movement, every sound. When Cole offered him a handful of hay, the boy extended his small hand with a natural delicacy that impressed the experienced man. Minutes passed as they visited different corrals. Mikey fed the horses with absolute concentration, as if each animal were a precious discovery. Cole noticed how the boy seemed to relax with each interaction, his shoulders losing the tension he carried. That's when they reached the end of the property, where the isolated corral was. "Eclipse is over there," Cole pointed to the most distant stall. "Black Mustang we brought from New Mexico, nobody can get close to him." Mikey walked to the fence as if magnetized. On the other side, Eclipse stood at the back of the stall, a magnificent silhouette against the dark wood. Eclipse, the magnificent Mustang that kept everyone at a distance, watched from the back of the stall with his wild eyes. Cole positioned himself strategically at a point where he could observe both, without being seen by the Mustang. 20 years of experience had taught him not to interfere in moments like this. Boy and horse stared at each other through the wooden slats. For long minutes, no one moved. Mikey held the hay in his small hands. Eclipse watched from the back of the stall. Then, slowly, something extraordinary happened. Eclipse began to approach, step by step, with a caution he had never shown with adults. Mikey remained motionless, just watching, as if he instinctively understood that any sudden movement would break the spell. When the Mustang finally reached the fence, something extraordinary was revealed. Mikey raised his arms and offered the hay, but Eclipse did more than accept the food. The horse lowered his head to the boy's height, their breathing synchronizing in a natural rhythm. For a moment that seemed eternal. Boy and animal shared a silence that spoke louder than any words. Cole witnessed everything in absolute silence, recognizing something his 20 years of experience couldn't fully explain, but knew was genuine. It wasn't just about horses and people. It was about two wounded souls finding healing in each other. When Buck and Jessica came out of the office, he led her along the property until they found Cole and Mikey at the last corral. Cole noticed his father's arrival with Jessica and made a discreet gesture for them to approach quietly. Buck approached his son with an expression that mixed amazement and incredulity as he witnessed the scene before his eyes. Mikey was at the fence, gently stroking Eclipse's muzzle through the slats. The wild Mustang that no adult had managed to touch remained there, calm, as if he had found something he had been searching for a long time. "Jesus Christ," Buck murmured quietly. "How is this possible?" "I can't explain it," Cole replied in a whisper. "But I can tell you one thing. If this boy wants to learn to ride, that horse will let him. And if they ever compete together—" Cole paused, searching for words. "It'll be something nobody's ever seen." Buck Harrison was a practical man, but he had learned to recognize extraordinary opportunities when they appeared, and he was looking directly at one. The following months transformed the Thompson family's life. Jessica proved to be an exceptional coordinator, organizing cowboy teams with efficiency that impressed Buck. Mikey spent afternoons at the ranch, always near Eclipse, developing a connection that defied conventional explanation. It was more than friendship. Boy and horse seemed to share a silent language. Mikey learned to listen to Eclipse not with his ears, but with his whole body. Their breathing synchronized, their movements harmonized in an unchoreographed but deeply intuitive dance. Eclipse, who fled from adults' tense energy, found in Mikey's calm presence a tranquility that allowed his nervous system to finally relax. That's when Jake Harrison returned from his specialization. Jake Harrison, at 29, had returned to the ranch after 2 years studying agribusiness, a way to take refuge in studies and prepare for big responsibilities after Elizabeth's betrayal, his ex-fiancée. Now, he was determined to focus on the family business. "Jake," Buck said at the first family dinner, "I want you to meet Jessica Thompson and her son. Jessica has been working with us coordinating cowboy teams and knows our current contracts well. I want you to take over office management and Jessica can update you on business progress while you were away." Working side by side in the office, Jake and Jessica developed an efficient professional partnership. While she mastered daily operations, he brought innovative ideas. Between contracts and spreadsheets, mutual admiration grew silently. Mikey's training sessions began in May. Cole taught the techniques: posture, balance, basic commands. His own children, 5 and 7 years old, frequently accompanied the training, serving as natural examples for Mikey of how children could interact with horses. The boy watched attentively how they behaved, without fear but with respect for the animals. The difference was that Cole's children learned with docile, well-trained horses, while Mikey was developing a connection with Eclipse, a machine of muscles and wild instincts that responded only to him. Buck observed everything, proud to see how Cole used his experience as both father and trainer to help that special family. Mikey absorbed everything in profound silence. He didn't speak, but learned through communication that transcended words. Eclipse responded not to what Mikey did, but to what Mikey felt. Every tension, every moment of calm, every heartbeat. The pair developed a language made of synchronized breathing, subtle touches, and a harmony that the most experienced veterinarians recognized as extraordinary, but rarely witnessed. As months passed, something remarkable happened with Eclipse. The wild Mustang, who had arrived untamable from New Mexico, began to reveal exceptional qualities. His natural speed became controlled and precise, his agility refined with impressive precision. Even more impressive was how he measured his colossal strength when he was with Mikey. Movements that could be explosive became smooth, a contained power that manifested only when necessary. Cole observed this transformation with growing admiration. "Dad," he said to Buck one afternoon, "Eclipse isn't the same horse anymore. He's developed protective instincts with the boy. It's as if he knows he's carrying something precious." It was true. In training, Eclipse demonstrated speed that rivaled thoroughbreds, but automatically reduced pace when he sensed any hesitation in Mikey. His strength, capable of knocking down an adult man, became gentle as a breeze when the boy needed support. "With Jessica's authorization, we could register him in the juvenile category at the county fair," Buck said thoughtfully. "That boy and that horse, they're ready, but it's a decision that's up to his mother." Buck explained to Jessica how these events worked in the countryside. They were important networking opportunities where farmers displayed their best animals and talents. As a sponsor, Buck used these competitions to promote the Harrison Ranch's reputation. "If Mikey does well in the children's category," Buck explained, "he might be called for a special demonstration with more experienced competitors. It's a rare honor, but his connection with Eclipse, it's something people need to see." Jessica smiled, but something in the word demonstration planted a seed of uneasiness in her mind. That night, after putting Mikey to bed, Jessica sat at the computer to research equestrian competitions. She wanted to better understand the world her son was getting involved in. YouTube led her down a trail of videos about children's riding, jumping techniques, safety equipment. That's when the algorithm suggested a video that would change everything. The tragic fall of Christopher Reeve. The day that changed Superman. Jessica clicked almost without thinking. The images hypnotized and horrified her at the same time. Christopher Reeve, the actor who had played Superman, was an experienced rider. During a competition, his horse stopped abruptly in front of an E-ooh obstacle. Reeve was thrown forward and fell headfirst. The result, she knew, quadriplegia. Superman had become vulnerable in a fraction of a second. Jessica closed the laptop with trembling hands. She couldn't sleep that night. The next morning she looked for Buck in the office, with Mikey playing outside. "Buck, I need to talk about the competition," Jessica said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I researched riding last night and I discovered things that scared me." Buck invited her to sit down. "What worries you?" "Christopher Reeve," Jessica said directly. "The Superman actor. He was an experienced rider, had been practicing for 10 years, and in one competition, in 1 second, quadriplegia. Buck, if something like that happens to Mikey..." Cole, who had heard the conversation from the door, entered respectfully. "May I join? It's important for you to understand some things. Jessica nodded and Cole sat next to Buck. Christopher Reeve competed with adults in dangerous events, Cole explained. Mikey will be safe in the children's category. But Eclipse is a wild Mustang, Jessica protested. If he gets scared, if something goes wrong... Eclipse was a wild Mustang, Cole gently corrected. Jessica, you've seen his transformation. That horse has developed protective instincts with Mikey that I've never witnessed in 20 years working with horses. He measures his strength, controls his speed, protects. The boy as if he were his own colt, leaned forward. Jessica, I understand your fears. They're legitimate, but Eclipse with Mikey isn't the same animal that arrived here untamable. They have a connection that transcends common training. Cole continued. Besides, I taught Mikey all the safety techniques. If a fall is inevitable, he knows to let go of the reins, fall to the side, curl his body in protective position. He wears a helmet, protective vest, and Eclipse. Jessica, that horse would never allow anything to weigh. Happened to Mikey. How can you be so sure? Jessica asked with tears in her eyes. Cole smiled gently. Because yesterday, during training, Mikey slipped in the saddle. Eclipse felt it immediately, reduced pace, and stopped gently until the boy repositioned himself. A common horse would keep running. Eclipse turned his head to check if Mikey was okay before continuing. Buck put his hand on Jessica's shoulder. The decision is yours, but know that Cole and I would never put Mikey at unnecessary risk. What they have is special, and it might be the key to his complete healing. Jessica looked out the window, where Mikey was petting Eclipse through the fence. The Mustang had lowered his head to the boy's height, and both seemed to be talking in their silent language. At that moment, Eclipse looked directly at the window, as if he knew his partnership with Mikey was being discussed. His eyes, once wild and distrustful, now conveyed a protective serenity that touched Jessica's heart. "All right," she finally said, "but with all possible safety precautions." "All of them," Cole promised. "Eclipse will take care of Mikey, and we'll take care of Eclipse." The months that followed were of intense preparation. Eclipse and Mikey trained daily, perfecting every movement, every jump, every change of direction. The connection between them strengthened with each session, while Jessica watched with a mixture of pride and controlled apprehension. Finally, the day that would change everything arrived. The morning of the competition dawned clear and cold. October in Texas brought sharp air that awakened the senses. The stands filled early. Farmers from neighboring counties came to watch the main adult competitions, but some curious onlookers also wanted to see what the Harrisons were sponsoring in the juvenile category. In the VIP box, the present Harrisons settled in. Buck in the center next to his wife Susan, Cole with his wife Emily and their 2 children, Jake beside Jessica. 3 generations of American success, supporting a boy who didn't speak. Competitor number 12, the announcer called, Mikey Thompson, riding Eclipse, sponsored by Harrison Enterprises. A murmur ran through the stands. Eclipse was known in the region, the untamable Mustang that no one had managed to ride. Seeing a child on him was almost unbelievable. Mikey entered the arena mounted on Eclipse. The black horse gleamed in the sun, every muscle defined, every step calculated. The boy, small on the powerful animal, seemed part of him. The event began. Simple obstacles first. Cones, low bars, direction changes. Eclipse and Mikey moved as one entity. There were no verbal commands, just silent communication that impressed experienced judges. "My God," whispered one of the evaluators, "I've never seen a connection like this." The crowd was mesmerized. This wasn't just a boy riding a horse. It was art in motion, a dance between species that touched something deep in everyone watching. The course was executed with absolute perfection. Eclipse demonstrated all his controlled power. Each jump precise, each direction change fluid as water. Mikey, small on the powerful animal, seemed born in that saddle. When they crossed the finish line, the stopwatch confirmed what everyone had witnessed. Mikey Thompson had won the juvenile category by an impressive margin. The crowd exploded in applause. In the VIP box, the Harrisons hugged emotionally. Buck discreetly wiped his eyes. Susan held her husband's hand with pride. Cole shouted celebrations. The main announcer approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an exceptional winner in the juvenile category. And due to this extraordinary performance, we invite Mikey Thompson to participate in the special demonstration with our beginner adult competitors. Jessica felt her stomach turn. It was exactly what Buck had mentioned, the opportunity few received, but which also raised the risk level. 30 minutes later, Mikey returned to the arena for the mixed demonstration. Now he was competing against 5 adult beginners in riding. The course was more challenging, the obstacles slightly higher. Eclipse seemed to understand the difference. His movements became even more concentrated, each step calculated. The pair navigated the course with an elegance that impressed even the adult competitors. When the result was announced, Mikey had achieved 3rd place, an extraordinary placement for a child competing against adults. The event narrator, an experienced man who didn't know Mikey's story, approached with the microphone for the traditional interview.
What an incredible performance. Tell me, young champion, how did you develop such a special connection with your horse? What was the secret of your training?
Mikey looked at the narrator, then at the microphone, then at the silent crowd waiting for his answer. Seconds passed. The silence became uncomfortable. The narrator, unaware of Mikey's condition, forced a nervous smile to the audience.
Well, I guess the cat got his tongue.
He tried to joke, provoking some nervous laughter from the stands. Realizing the situation was becoming awkward, he decided to ask a simpler question.
All right, how about just telling me your horse's name? This beautiful animal deserves to be known.
The narrator placed the microphone in front of Mikey again, this time visibly apprehensive. The boy looked at the ground, paralyzed. He was probably reliving the threatening words of his father's killer. If you ever open your mouth, you'll meet the same end. After a few more seconds of awkward silence, someone from the crowd shouted,
The boy is mute, and the horse's name is Midnight.
That's when something extraordinary happened. Mikey slowly raised his head, and in a low voice that was barely picked up by the microphone whispered,
His name is Eclipse.
The narrator was amazed. He was sure he had heard something, but couldn't believe it. The narrator was perceptive and maliciously decided to provoke the boy. He quickly put the microphone back near the boy.
Sorry, did you say something? The name is Midnight?
Mikey looked directly at the narrator, then at the stands where his mother was crying emotionally, and with a clear voice that echoed throughout the stadium declared,
His name is Eclipse.
The silence was absolute for a fraction of a second. Then 5,000 people exploded simultaneously. It wasn't just applause. It was screaming, crying, an emotional celebration that went far beyond a simple equestrian competition. In the VIP box, Jessica completely lost emotional control. 4 years of anguish, fear, and hope transformed into an explosion of pure joy. Without thinking, without hesitating, she turned and threw herself into Jake's arms, sobbing with happiness against his chest. Jake received her instinctively, his arms closing around her as Jessica trembled with emotion. For a moment that seemed eternal. They remained embraced, she seeking comfort in his silent strength, he feeling her warmth and vulnerability against his body. That's when Jake felt something he had been trying to deny for months. The attraction that had gradually grown during their hours working together in the office, the shared conversations, the exchanged smiles, the mutual admiration he had forced himself to keep strictly professional. Now, with Jessica in his arms, his body responded in a way he could no longer ignore. Jake felt caution mixed with attraction. Workplace relationships had cost him dearly before, but Jessica was different, genuine, strong, special. Still, as Jessica continued embrace to him, Jake couldn't pull away. There was something different about her, something genuine that Elizabeth had never had. Jessica wasn't calculating or self-interested. She was a mother fighting for her son, a woman who had rebuilt her life through her own strength. Buck and Susan hugged beside them, too emotional to speak. Cole raised his fists in the air as if his own son had just taken his first steps. When Jessica finally pulled away from Jake, her eyes were red but shining with happiness. "He spoke, Jake," she whispered, as if she still couldn't believe it. "My boy spoke." Jake smiled, gently touching her face to wipe away a tear. "He did speak. and he said exactly what needed to be said. In that moment, both knew something had changed between them, but they also knew it would take time, care and much conversation before they could explore what that change meant. The placement didn't matter. Mikey had found his voice, and Eclipse had found his partner. But more importantly, the foundations of a new family were being delicately built. 14 months later, in a simple ceremony at Fairview's church, Jake Harrison and Jessica Thompson were married. Mikey was the ring bearer, mounted on Eclipse, who had become not just his horse but his best friend. Buck Harrison spoke at the reception, his voice firm despite the emotion. Sometimes, God sends us exactly what we need when we least expect it. Jessica brought competence to our business. Mikey brought joy to our family, and together they reminded us that true wealth isn't measured in acres or dollars, but in moments like this. Eclipse grazed peacefully in the field behind the house, where Mikey and Jake had built a new fence. The wild Mustang had found his home, just as the silent boy had found his voice. The Harrison empire continued to prosper, but now carried something money couldn't buy. The joy of a family rebuilt through kindness, patience, and the transformative power of believing in the impossible. On weekends, visitors came from distant counties to see the boy who talked to horses. Mikey, now 12 years old, trained other young people, teaching that communication goes far beyond words. Eclipse, he would say, stroking the animal's neck, they silenced me with fear. But you, friend, you gave me the courage to find my voice again. And as the sun set over the 15,000 acres of the Harrison Empire, a simple truth echoed across the property. Sometimes miracles come riding on black horses, carried by brave children who never give up dreaming, even when words hide for years. Mikey Thompson's story reminds us that healing has no deadline, that family can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most important words are those we wait 4 years to hear. What about you? Have you ever witnessed a moment when the impossible became reality? Have you seen how a single word can change everything? Remember, this is a work of fiction created for entertainment. If you enjoyed this narrative, leave a comment sharing. Which part touched your heart the most?